Okay, guys, Giovanni Reyna looks to be on the move this January, a move that is honestly a little overdue. And various clubs have been touted as potential destinations for Gio. To be honest, it's hard to get too excited about any of these options, considering he was being linked with, Girona and Real Sociedad, places like that. But each of these clubs has different pros and cons, and I'm going to go over each one of them, why they would be good, why they wouldn't be good. I'm also going to talk about the possibility that he stays at Dortmund for essentially what would be 4 more months, and whether or not that would be a good option too. Okay, it's an interesting one, and I think you guys have seen the reports, some very credible reports from pretty decent outlets, and including Romano himself, the man Fabrizio. But at the same time, there are question marks about each one of these moves for various reasons. And there are also reasons why they could be good moves. Reality is, I don't know which one of these would be the best. I have one which I would prefer that I'll tell you at the end, which one I like the best of all of these. But like I said, there's arguments for and against each one of these moves. There are also arguments for and against staying at Dortmund at least until the summer. So, how are we doing? Tiago. No, I'm live, Tiago. When you see the comments like this, it's usually live. He should come to the EPL because he'll face the best teams and players in the planet, says Craze Amnesty. Please not Forest, says Gigolo Bro 09. Great name. Matt says hashtag free Gio. Adam Garcia, why do people still have the idea that Gio has attitude problems? Because, Adam, they've been consuming USSF media since the last World Cup, and the propaganda to smear Gio was strong. Kevin Pete giving us content in the middle of the day on a Thursday. Yes, guys, content is incoming more regularly now. Isn't Forest facing a 10-point deduction? Possibly. We will see. We don't know what's going to happen with that. In the EPL, it feels like there are rules for thee and rules for me. And if you're Manchester City, then there's a different set of rules. If you have enough money to pay all the right lawyers and you are intimately involved with various people within UEFA, you have a different set of rules than if you're Nottingham Forest or Everton. But that's a different discussion. What happened to the Monday stream, says Isaac. It's still there. This Monday I was on set, so I couldn't do it. But this coming Monday, I will be able to do it. Hopefully. Fingers crossed. Tiago says, what was your opinion on the last USMNT? I couldn't see. Not good. I did it on Patreon. I did a whole Patreon breakdown on it. Terrible players made worse. The summary is this. Terrible players made worse by Berhalter's terrible tactics. That is sort of the summary that I have. Okay. But let's dive into this. But before we do, you guys, Underdog Fantasy Sports is a new sponsor of the channel, you guys. And I made some good money. Well, not good money. I made a little bit of money playing the game last week. And I'll show you what I had here. Let me just make this a little bigger for all of y'all. Hopefully that's a bit better. Okay, so Underdog is fun because they have this new pick'em game, and with this pick'em game, you basically get to pick anywhere from 2 to 5 players, and they give you like an over/under on them. For example, with Inaki Peña, right? This was the Barcelona Real Betis game. Okay, so they said Inaki Peña, the Barca keeper, would make lower than or higher than 2.5 saves. I thought to myself, I don't know if there's going to be serious shots on goal for Betis, so I went with lower. Now, the thing is, they still managed to score 2 goals, all right, thanks to Isco. So good for, I've got that one. Lower than 2 saves. He made 2 saves, plus he conceded 2 goals. If he had saved one of those, I wouldn't have gotten it. Now, I put 3 picks. I put $10 down, and I would have gotten $74 except for Joao Felix. Now, Joao Felix started on the bench. So I thought I'd be clever and go, oh, what are the odds that, Joao Felix is going to get higher than 2.5 shots coming off the bench? Very unlikely. Turns out he got 2 in like the last 10 minutes. So I was still correct, but because he didn't start, apparently they have a rule that his don't count. So I still get the overall money, but I just don't get the money for Joao Felix, okay? For Isco, higher than 1.5 shots attempted. He's an attacking midfielder. I figured he might easily try 2 shots during the game. Turns out he got 2 goals and attempted 3 shots. So I got on that. So instead of getting the 74-40 because of Joao Felix, and I've learned my lesson, now if they're not starting, I won't include them, okay? But instead of getting 74-40, I still managed to get $30 off of this one. So I put 10 down and I got 30 back. Now, guys, if you want to play, be careful. Don't go betting a lot of money. Be like me. I put $10 down. It made the game a little more fun. I was watching for, Johnny anyways. So it made the game a little bit more fun. I put $10 that I could afford to lose. And if I lose it, I lose it. And then sometimes you'll win a little bit of money. If you want to play, use my code when you sign up, 11 Yanks. That's 11 YANKS, all caps, no spaces. And Underdog will match whatever you deposit in your account up to $100 if you use my code. So get that below. Or if you don't want to, use the code, just click on the link in the description and it'll be the same thing. So again, bet responsibly. Don't be stupid. Don't bet your house or your car or your kid's college tuition or your college tuition. But a few dollars here and there makes the game fun. So thank you to Underdog for sponsoring this stream. Let's get into the options for Giovanni Reyna here. So these are the 3 reported destinations right now. I'm not discussing Real Sociedad or Girona because I don't think either of those are happening. The 3 that are being touted are Nottingham Forest, Olympique Marseille, and Sevilla FC. 3 interesting destinations for Gio. Okay, let's start with the first one, and that first one is Nottingham Forest. Okay, according to Fabrizio Romano, Nottingham Forest and Borussia Dortmund have scheduled a new round of talks for Gio Reyna's loan deal. Now, this would be a loan with a buy clause in the summer, up to the club. Obviously, if Gio goes and performs well, they could buy him for at least 5 figures. I don't know exactly what the fee would be, but it would be somewhere, my guess, in the 15 to 20 range. It would be higher for a man of Gio's talent, but he's entering his last year on his Dortmund contract. So just like Pulisic, who's worth more than 20 million, right, went from Chelsea to Milan for 20 million, Gio Reyna will go for less than he's worth because he is on his last year with Borussia Dortmund. And also, they're not playing him much, so it's hard to demand high amounts of money for him. Now, Nottingham Forest are not in danger of relegation right now. If you look at them in the table, they are 16th. And these last 3 clubs, Luton, Burnley, and Sheffield, are at the bottom. I think very likely those are the 3 that will go down. Everton is only in the position that they're in because they also had the points deduction. Nottingham Forest have 20 points. So they are technically 4 points clear of relegation. I can't see them getting relegated unless they get a 10-point deduction. Then they're in deep, deep trouble. So maybe, and I'll talk a little bit about this, one of the reasons that they're bringing in Gio Reyna on loan is because they plan to sell their current number 10, Morgan Gibbs-White, in order to make them more compatible with FFP, Financial Fair Play. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's basically a rule in the Premier League saying you can only spend so much more than you bring in. You can't be bringing in 100 million a year and spending 700 million on players. I don't know what the exact figures are, but they are alleging that Nottingham Forest is in breach of this rule. So it is possible, and there are heavy rumors about Newcastle wanting Morgan Gibbs-White. And that might change a lot of things if they have to sell Morgan Gibbs-White this January in order to be FFP compliant. Then they bring in Gio Reyna to replace him. But we'll see. That may not happen at all. If they don't sell Morgan Gibbs-White, since Nuno Espirito Santos has come in, he's played mostly a 4-2-3-1 with Nottingham Forest. Now, Yates and Danilo are usually in the double pivot. Gibbs-White plays the 10. And then Elanga was injured for this game here. So that's why he was not in the lineup. But the lineup is usually Elanga and Hudson-Odoi on the wings, or sometimes Dominguez replaces Hudson-Odoi or Elanga if he's injured. So they do have some options. Now, what's very clear is that Morgan Gibbs-White is their number 10, and Gio Reyna is a number 10 primarily. He can play wide. If he goes to Nottingham Forest, will he oust Gibbs-White? I doubt it. Right now, Gibbs-White has 3 goals, 3 assists on the season. He hasn't been incredible, but he has been pretty good, certainly in transition. Now, could Gio Reyna oust a guy like Hudson-Odoi? Absolutely. He's a better winger than Hudson-Odoi. Dominguez, Elanga, they've both been quite impressive in the minutes that they've played. In fact, I think Elanga is their highest goal contributor after Chris Wood, their striker. So it's hard to say how much playing time Giovanni Reyna would get. Again, to me, this very much depends on do they end up selling Morgan Gibbs-White? If they don't sell Morgan Gibbs-White, is this the right move for Giovanni Reyna? Well, let's look at pros and cons here. The pros, possibly more playing time. Possibly, because he may start, in fact, very likely will start on the bench and have to earn minutes coming off the bench, or he may start on the wing. We don't know really what the plan would be. So that would be one pro. There's a good chance he would get more playing time than he's getting right now at Dortmund, where he's getting 10 to 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes off the bench at Dortmund sometimes, not even all the time. It's a fresh environment, a fresh start. Sometimes a player just needs to sort of get a bit of a reboot and going to a new environment, new club, new teammates, new expectations, new tactics. If they believe in him, it could be a good sort of regenerative start for Gio without all the baggage that he has at Dortmund from, either past injuries or whatever perceptions of who he is as a player, right? Nuno Espirito Santos is a very forward-thinking coach. He's a good tactical coach. He did a good job with Wolves for the most part. And there's good reason to believe that, him in charge at Nottingham Forest is certainly better than the coach that they had before. And they do seem to be playing better. They still have defensive issues and they still have goalkeeping issues. If Nuno Santos is bringing him in because he likes Gio and believes that he can be a meaningful contributor to them in the second half of the season, then that would go down as a pro. The problem is cons, and that's my first con. This feels like Jorge Mendes shuffling clients around. Now, Jorge Mendes also represents Nuno Santos. And you remember when he was at Wolves, a lot of Jorge Mendes clients would end up at Wolves, some with some success and some not. So now that Gio Reyna has signed with Jorge Mendes when he left Wasserman, is Jorge Mendes basically bringing him to Forest because of his connection with Nuno Santos? I don't know. Does Nuno Santos even really want him? That is the question mark, and honestly, something we don't really know the answer to. The other con. For me, the speed of play in the Premier League may not really suit Gio's style. Now, whether or not the Premier League is the best league in the world is debatable because best is a subjective thing, but it is certainly the fastest league in the world. In terms of the ball moving from front to back, it is extremely quick, speed of play, very intense. There's very little room for error. You will be exposed in the Premier League if you have weaknesses. Many, many players have. Does Gio have weaknesses? Of course he does. He's 21 years old. One of his weaknesses is that sometimes he can hold on to the ball a little too long. Now, generally speaking, when he does, he makes the right decision, the right pass. But in the Premier League, he may not have that kind of time, which may lead to worse decision making. Okay, so it's a question mark. Is Giovanni Reyna ready for the Premier League? There are lots of players that do well in Germany and then don't do well in the Premier League. So that would be a question mark I have. The other thing is that it is a very physical league, and Gio Reyna has had an injury history that I wouldn't call him injury prone yet, but certainly there have been question marks about his ability to stay fit under, tough challenges that he would face in the Premier League. That's another con. Another con would be because Forest are one of the, bottom 5 teams in the Premier League, are they going to have a lot of the ball? Gio thrives when his teams have the ball. He's a creator. He's a technician. He's a playmaker, but he needs the ball to do that. Is Gio going to be spending 75% of the game running around defending, closing down passing lanes, getting involved in pressing schemes? Or is he going to be allowed to do what he does best, which is have the ball, create, orchestrate, play make? Those are the cons that make me question whether or not Gio to Nottingham Forest is a very good move. Okay? So that's that. What do you guys think about him to Nottingham Forest? Some people have, hey, Pete, love the show. This is a weird one. In addition to soccer info, is the show offering stepsister relationship advice as well? Thanks either way. What on earth is that? I have no idea what you're talking about. Yeah, what do you guys think about Nottingham Forest? I'm not sure about this. I would probably give this, a 6, because a 6 out of 10. It could go well, but there's a lot of reasons why it might not. Okay? So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Let's go to Olympique Marseille. This is the other club that's being touted here. According to World Soccer Talk, well, World Soccer Talk is actually paraphrasing from other accounts, but this was the one that I found. It's essentially the same story. Olympique Marseille is trying to lure Gio Reyna away from the loan deal to Nottingham Forest. So they're coming in saying, hey, if Gio Reyna is available on a loan, we could use him. Marseille is owned by American Frank McCourt, former owner of the LA Dodgers. Okay, that's neither here nor there for me. Gennaro Gattuso is the coach of Marseille. Marseille are not doing terribly in the French league. They're in 7th, although you could argue they should be higher. And they are still in the Europa League. Now, they have played under Gattuso mostly some version of a 3-5-2 or a 5-3-2. In this formation, Gio could play as the attacking midfielder. The only problem is that right now they have Harit there, who's also a very good 10. He's currently with Morocco at the African Cup of Nations, but he will be back shortly. So will Gio just be competing with Harit for minutes in that attacking midfield position? Potentially. Now, he could also play, well, I wouldn't have him play as any of the wingbacks, but what about playing up top? Right now they have Aubameyang and Ndiaye. Ndiaye, I don't know how to pronounce that properly. He's from Brentford. I remember him. Actually, to be honest, more often it's been Aubameyang and Vitinha, the Portuguese forward, playing up top. Now, one thing to note that is interesting about this deal is that Gio did seem to strike up a very good relationship. Actually, no, I'm thinking of Pulisic. Scratch that. There was no relationship with Aubameyang at Dortmund, and that was Pulisic, okay? So there are question marks about this move, right? And whether or not the French league and Marseille in particular is a good move for him, okay? Let's just talk about the pros and cons. Fumar Mota says, Ndiaye. Thank you, Fumar. Ndiaye. The pros, likely more playing time than at Dortmund, okay? Marseille need help. They need help to push for a top 4 spot in the French league, for sure. And he could be a regular contributor. Maybe that means starting some. Maybe that means coming off the bench in some, and likely a lot of it depending on his actual performances. Okay, and just like at Forest, it would be a fresh environment and a fresh start. Another pro would be that they have 2 games a week compared to Nottingham Forest, who only has 1 game a week. For the most part, they have 2 because Olympique Marseille is in the Europa League as well. So they are simultaneously going to try to win the Europa League. I don't think they will, but they'll have those games and also try to compete to get up into that top 4 in the French league, in Ligue 1, and maybe get a Champions League spot next season, which is very possible. They're not that far off. Cons. The club are kind of a mess right now. There's a real lack of stability, a real lack of direction, and a real lack of planning. So I don't know, is that the environment he needs to be walking into right now? Does he need more of a stable environment? It also depends on the player. Some players thrive in that instability. Maybe Gio will take it on his shoulders and really push Marseille forward. It's hard to know. A lot of that's going to be up to Gio, but it certainly isn't easy coming into a club that doesn't feel like it has a lot of, direction. Gattuso is still quite unproven as a coach. Amazing player. Honestly, one of my favorite defensive midfielders of all time. Okay? But as a coach, he's not really been very successful anywhere he's gone. And there are question marks. Is he just getting all of these jobs because he was a big name player? Or is he actually a good coach? That is the question, and we don't know the answer. I would lean at the moment, not so much. He seems a bit volatile. He seems very intense and very passionate, but there does seem to be a lack of tactical nous and certainly a lack of success if you look at his record. It is a very physical league, Ligue 1. It's not physical fast the way that the Premier League is. It's physical dangerous, the way that players will just try to foul you, try to injure you. There's not a lot of player protection in Ligue 1, okay? And that for Gio, for a player with, like I talked about his injury history, that worries me a little bit. Are they going to see a technical creator like Gio and just go foul him and you can keep Marseille quiet? Remember that both Messi and Neymar complained about the physicality. It's not just the physicality. The physicality is fine. It's the amount and the intensity of fouls in that league that are a real problem for creative attacking players. So that would be a big con. Once again, I didn't put this here, but it's the same with that Forest. Gattuso is also represented by Jorge Mendes. So, is this again a situation of Jorge Mendes just shuffling his clients around without, really doing what's best for the player or for the club? Is he using the situation to make money? That is the big question, and we don't really know the answer to that, but it's certainly fair to question if, Marseille is the right spot for Giovanni Reyna. Let's talk about the third option that is being touted with not as much, like the reports about Sevilla are not as definitive or reliable. Now, Jacob Steinberg did report it. He works for The Guardian. The Guardian isn't quite the Mirror, okay, or the Sun, but it can be iffy. Sometimes they get it right. Sometimes it feels a little bit like a tabloid. So it's hard to say how much truth there is in this. Now, Sevilla are trying to beat Nottingham Forest to the signing of Gio Reyna from Borussia Dortmund. Would Sevilla be a good option? Well, Sevilla is currently like Forest, although probably more so than Forest, because Forest does seem a little safer so long as they don't get that points deduction. They are slogging it out at the bottom of the La Liga table, which is unusual for Sevilla. Okay, this is a Europa League winning club. They're usually challenging for a spot in Europe. This is very unusual for a club that's typically in a very good spot, but they are 17th. They only have 16 points on the season, and they are only 1 point safe from relegation. So it is an absolute relegation dogfight in La Liga for Sevilla FC. This is a tough one, man, because the coach, Sanchez Flores, plays mostly a 3-4-3 since he came in. Okay, he came in December. So we don't have a lot of data on him, but we have a few games. It seems like he's mostly playing a 3-4-3. Campos and Suso are there. Sometimes he plays 3-5-2 or 5-3-2. It seems like so when he played against Atletico Madrid, he played more of a 5-3-2, very conservative. Okay, and Suso and Campos were the two strikers, even though they're more like wingers. There is no evidence that he's using a 10. All right, so that is a big question mark. They have some good players over at Sevilla. Obviously, Sergio Ramos is their captain there. At times, they are still using Rakitic is still there. Adnan Januzaj, some of you might remember him from Manchester United a long, long time ago, is there. There are some players who feels like maybe they're kind of at the end of their career and it's really hurting. They have En-Nesyri there, who's actually been pretty good for them this season. I think he's got 11 or 12 goal contributions. So can they, again, it's about if they're bringing in Gio, is there a plan? Do they see Gio as like, hey, this is a guy who, if we play him at the 10, will create more chances for us, will score goals for us, and will increase our chances of beating relegation. So let's bring him in because we really think he can be a valuable contribution. Or is it a case of, we can use all the help we can get. If nothing else, look, there's no obligation, right, to buy Gio in the summer for any of these teams. So it feels like a low risk loan in January. And then if he doesn't perform, they don't take up the buy option, right? So it feels like low risk, and low risk can be good, but low risk can also be bad because they could go, yeah, sure, we'll take a player for a no transfer fee. We got to pay what, 75% of his salary? Fine. He can be useful, but they don't really have a plan to use him, or they don't really rate him, or don't really want him. I don't know here. I don't know what they want or what they don't want. I'm speculating, okay? So that's why it's hard to know which would be the best. For me, the best place would be the guys that really want him and have a plan to use him and are going to not build around him, but certainly put him in a position to be successful, right? That's 50% of it right there. So whichever team that is, if there's a genuine plan for him and the coach really wants him and has a way that he thinks he can be useful, then that's probably the best option. But reality is we don't know. Now, let's look at pros and cons for Sevilla. For me, the pros. La Liga suits Gio's technical style more than the Premier League or Ligue 1. Okay? That is one of the pros. I think that the two leagues that best suit Gio Reyna outside of the Bundesliga are Serie A and La Liga. Okay, La Liga because it's a very technical league, very tactical as well. Serie A because I think it's a little bit of a slower pace, but very tactical, very cerebral league. And I actually think Serie A would be the perfect move for Gio, but it doesn't seem like there's any, real takers from Serie A right now. Sevilla are bad at the moment, but they are usually a well-run club. That's why Sevilla might be a more interesting move. And if he helps Sevilla to evade relegation, he will be hailed there as a hero. Again, Sevilla, despite slogging it out at the bottom of the table, are also in Europa League. Okay? So they have La Liga plus Europa League. The amount of minutes available at both Sevilla and Marseille seems to indicate that he will get more playing time. Now, the cons. The relegation dogfight is never easy to come to mid-season. It's just not. You come in, there's real desperation, everybody's under pressure. It isn't always the easiest environment to adapt to, particularly if you're coming from a different league. Okay, so that could be a con. But again, some of that is up to Gio to come and adapt quickly and contribute quickly. The other thing is that because Sanchez Flores plays a 3-4-3, it's not abundantly clear how he'll be used. Will he be used as a winger? Maybe. Maybe that's not his best, his best position, but getting on the field is certainly better than not getting on the field at Dortmund at all, right? So it's a con because I guess it's a question mark. What's the plan? It's like I mentioned before. What is the plan? The best place for him is the ones that have a plan for Gio. Now, of these three options, I probably Sevilla are not in Europe. Did they get knocked out? Oh, they got last. You're right. Hang on, let me get this. Europa League groups. Hang on. I might be peddling fake news here. Yes, wait, you guys are correct. Nope, no Europa League for Sevilla. Last. Yeah, okay. Ignore. They only have that relegation dogfight. Okay. Oof. So that makes the Sevilla move even more complicated. Now, I was going to say Sevilla would be my favorite choice, my best choice, mainly because it's La Liga and because Sevilla are a very well-run club. And I think Gio's style would thrive in Sevilla. Okay. But I don't know. I don't know now. Without Europa League, I think he'll definitely play. Look, Sevilla need all the help they can get. I think he will absolutely get minutes there. So I would still prefer Sevilla for Gio. Okay? And again, just because they loan him, let's say Sevilla loans him, he does really well, gets 5 to 8 goal contributions and helps them to avoid relegation. They could say, okay, we want to buy him in the summer, but Gio has a great Copa America and now his valuation goes up and, whatever the clause is, let's say it's 16 million, Sevilla are ready to pay that. But now Dortmund is thinking, well, he did well enough. And in Copa America, he performed so well that we think we can get 30, 40 million for him. There's usually a clause in those loan to buy options where the club can actually buy the option back. So basically, Dortmund would have to give Sevilla 3 million to nullify their option to buy. So they put in that 3 million. Instead of selling him now for 16 million, they sell him for 35 million to a different club who now wants him. That's a possibility too. So just because he goes there doesn't mean it's a guarantee that if he performs well, that loan is going to become permanent, right? But it could be a good short-term loan for him to show that he does have value and that he can be a contributor in a top 5 league. Now, here's the other question. Should he stay at Dortmund? And this is a question because none of the options there are perfect, or even, I would say, very good. They're possibly good. But I think if it was Real Sociedad or Girona or AC Milan, you could think, oh, wow, those are all good options. We'll take those in a heartbeat. These other options could be good, but there's a lot of cons and a lot of question marks. So in light of that, what are the pros of him staying at Dortmund? Number one, it's only 4 more months. Okay. It's the end of January now. The season ends at the end of May. So it would be 4 more months, which is not that long of a time. All right. He may have better options in the summer when teams do their big shopping. I think one of the reasons why there's not a lot of takers for Gio right now is that most teams have their rosters and squads pretty set, and they're looking, to plug holes here and there or sign very young, academy prospect type players. But the big shopping usually doesn't happen in January anymore. In fact, it almost never did. It mostly happens in the summer. So if if he waits it out at Dortmund, all right, plays 15, 20 minutes off the bench, tries to contribute where he can, and he has a strong Copa America, he could have better options in the summer. Now, he could have better options in the summer regardless, because a loan doesn't mean, like I said earlier, a loan doesn't mean a required sale. The other thing is that Terzic may not last the season. Okay, I know they gave him the vote of confidence at the end of the first half of the season. And yes, he won both games since the season returned, but both of those games were against the last 2 teams in the league. And frankly, when you watch them play, they still don't look that convincing even against those teams. So, Dortmund did also bring in Nuri Sahin and Sven Bender as coaches, which usually, if And we're back. Sorry, guys. My internet went out briefly there. And I lost the PowerPoint too. But that was the last slide. Look, the two cons of staying at Dortmund would be, you know, and the prolonging of his, I don't want to say agony because let's face it, he's not in agony, but the prolonging of the saga at Dortmund that has already gone a little bit too long. Okay. So that would be the cons of staying at Dortmund. The other con would be if he's not playing much in every game, is he going to be 90 minutes fit for Copa America, right? We need a Gio that is ready to play 90 minutes game in and game out, because not only do we have to overcome a lot of difficult teams to play against, we have to overcome our own coach, Greg Berhalter. And having Gio Reyna on the field gives us a greater chance of, performing above the level that we typically perform under Greg Berhalter. So it's a tough ask for us in Copa America. Most teams just have to play the opponent in front of them. We have to play the opponent in front of us, and we have to overcome the coach who's being paid $1.7 million a year to make us actively worse. So if he doesn't play 90 minutes, Greg could say, oh, I've got a perfect excuse to either A, bench him, B, put him on the wing, or C, start him, but pull him off early in the second half. And then I have a perfectly well-made excuse to the media that, well, Gio Reyna isn't quite 90 minutes fit. So those would be the cons of staying at Dortmund. Overall, I don't want him to stay at Dortmund. I will root for him wherever he goes. I would prefer Sevilla, but to be honest, if I had to pick which one I think is actually going to happen, I think Forest is probably the most likely. I think he will end up at Nottingham Forest, and I think he will face an uphill battle for minutes, although I do think he'll get more minutes than he gets at Dortmund. And how he handles it and how much he contributes is really up to him. Will he have to learn to be better defensively? Probably, yes. Even though you're a 10, you're still going to have to do more, defensive work, especially if you're playing for a relegation side and you're not going to have much of the ball. So that's big question mark for Gio. How he handles the move, how he handles settling into a new league, because it would either be the French league, the Spanish league, or the English league. What would be the perfect move? Says Zach Casey. Perfect world. Where do you want him to go in the summer? I've said it before. I'll say it again. Not everyone agrees with me, but I think Milan needs a creator in that midfield. There's a lot of good players in that midfield, but they do not have a pure creator. And I think they're very heavily reliant on Leao and Pulisic on the wings to provide the attack and the penetration. I think you add Gio Reyna to that midfield, and now they are cooking. But a lot of people get mad at me when I say that. Oh, no, they don't even play that way. Yes, they don't play that way because they don't have a 10. It's almost like they don't play that way because they don't have anybody who can play that way. Okay, now I'm not saying they're going to. I'm just saying if you're asking me, that's what Milan needs. They also need good center backs that don't get injured. But they need that extra dimension added to their attack, which is an attacking midfielder. Whether or not they get it, I don't think it's ever going to happen. But if in the perfect world, that would be my perfect destination for him. Real Sociedad would be another. Marco Pelotti says Pioli will not play with a 10. Maybe not. Maybe not. But he doesn't have a 10. So do we know for sure that he won't play with a 10? That is the question. All right. So that's it, guys. Those are my thoughts on Gio Reyna. Let me know what you prefer in the chat. Where do you want, of these three options, well, four options, let's say Forest, Sevilla, Marseille, and Dortmund. Let me know in the chat. What do you prefer of those four moves? Or staying at Dortmund is not really a move, but you know what I mean. Greenman1694 says Rangers is like Musa, can't score to save his life. He's also not a pure creator. He's more of a box-to-box midfielder. When I say he's not a pure creator, it doesn't mean he can't create. Of course he can. Every box-to-box midfielder has some creative elements to them, but he's not a pure creator, and nobody in that Milan midfield is a pure creator. Certainly not like Gio. So Gio is going to save Nottingham Forest from relegation. We'll see. I mean, if they don't get a point deduction, honestly, I can't see them getting relegated. The three teams are so bad. Sheffield, Burnley, and Luton are so bad. I can't see Forest getting relegated. They would have to be abysmal to get relegated. Absolutely abysmal. So I can't see that happening. Now, if they get a point deduction, they're in real trouble, and they better start putting points on the board fast. It seems like most of you are saying Forest. Stratman wants Forest. Thiago wants Forest. Brad Pendleton wants Forest. S27 wants Forest. Nick Rosas says La Liga. I'm guessing that means Sevilla. Did you read the super chats, Pete? Let's see. Thiago. I read Thiago's. I read Stratman's interesting one. What is your opinion on Jorge Mendes as an agent? I think that he's a bit shady. I think he has a lot of players there, but some of his dealings doesn't feel like they've been in the best interest of the player or the club, but more in the best interest of Jorge Mendes. But I don't really know for sure. Like, that's my opinion on Jorge Mendes. I don't know for sure if that's what's happening, okay? It's a shady world. Football business at the highest levels is a shady world, no matter who your agent is. Julian Vivas. Since Taylor Booth started last game for Utrecht, does that change his transfer status? I haven't really heard any rumors about Taylor Booth going anywhere, to be honest. I mean, there was rumors here and there, but nothing very concrete. And to be honest, he hasn't really earned a move with his play this season. I think he's going to have to contribute a lot more and perform really like he's stagnated this season. He was very good in the latter half of last season. This season, we haven't seen that Taylor Booth. So I don't know what's happening with him. I don't know why he seems to have stagnated, but he really hasn't been very good for Utrecht and gets pulled quite often before the end of the game, which is not good for an attacker. So I don't know what's happening with Taylor Booth, but if he wants a transfer, he's going to have to start performing a lot better than he has been. All right, guys, thanks for hanging. Those are my thoughts on Gio. Smash that like button if you haven't already. And if you're new, subscribe to the channel. Turn on the notifications button since that way you get a notification anytime I have a video or a live stream. Thank you to Underdog for sponsoring this stream. You guys have a great Thursday. I got to go get ready for my show tonight, and I'll talk to you all soon.